Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday. Hope everyone is having a great weekend so far. We're here with Margot Douaihy. Douaihy.
Perfect. Yep. Perfect.
Amazing. I was
You
like,
got it.
"Yeah, I already forgot." No, no. Um, Margot is the author of Scorched Grace, which is our April fiction pick. So really, really excited to be chatting with her about all of the questions that came up during the reading process. So to introduce her to y'all, Margot Douaihy lives and works in Northampton, Massachusetts. She earned a BA in writing from the University of Pittsburgh and a PhD in creative writing from Lancaster University. Douaihy is the author of the lyrical crime novel Scorched Grace, which was named a New York Times Book Review Editor's Choice Best Book of 2023 by Marie Claire, and one of the most anticipated crime books of the year by Crime Reads and LGBTQ Reads. She is also the author of the poetry collections Bandit/Queen, The Runaway Story of Belle Starr, Scranton Lace, Girls Like You, and I Would Ruby If I Could. Margot, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And on your Sunday, on the day off, it's just a really wonderful thing that we can be together because of some art, some reason to bring us all together. So it's very special. And thanks for spending the time reading the book and wanting to chat about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, congratulations on your fiction debut. You wrote a whole book. That's amazing. I'd love to hear about the publishing process, what that has been like for you. And I know this is the first book in Gillian Flynn's new imprint. So what
Yeah.
was working with Gillian Flynn like for you as well?
I I mean I'm still getting used to it. It's just one of those remarkable things that feels like the anticipation of like a holiday as it were, and it's just very special. It's still, when I see, I don't know, the name even just on the publishing, like imprint itself is a huge gift for me because I was writing this book in my head for about 10 years. It's something that I wanted to do whilst I was writing poetry and working on some weird, like kind of hybrid projects. So I, the fact that I don't know, wanted to do something a little different than what the genre expectations sort of were at the time. In a way, I knew it would be a long process and maybe swimming upstream a little bit, but I had the great fortune to win. Actually, well, I won by losing. I entered a contest. I entered a publishing contest, a first novel prize that I like lost very epically. And 3 months after that, and I say that because like it didn't long list, didn't short list in anything. It was probably like number 999 that I've been through. But my agent Laura McDougall reached out about 3 months after the contest and said, you absolutely didn't win, and you need to polish the work a lot, but your writing is so weird, and it stayed with me, and I can't stop thinking about it. So if you revise the book, I'll take you on as a client. And so I want to be transparent about that because if anyone on the call is also a writer, there are just so many moments where we have the kind of convergence of determination and luck, and I'm a recipient of that. And you just have to keep rolling the dice and not giving up in that regard. But so I revised the book. My agent Laura is great. She represents a, actually a vast amount of her client list is LGBTQ plus. So she's a real champion for the queer community in terms of our authorial interests. So the pandemic happened and things were a little quiet, and then she managed to put the manuscript in front of Zando at about 3 months after Gillian Flynn announced that she would be taking on an imprint all her own.
Oh,
To
wow.
Yeah, so the timing was just perfect. And when she said that we had interest, we had a couple of offers on the book, but she's like, we have one really important one from Gillian Flynn. Was like the author of Gone Girl and Sharp Objects, which I had just watched the TV adaptation of on HBO Max with Amy Adams. So good. So good. Patricia Clarkson is a gift to humanity.
Period.
Um, and I was super confused. I didn't understand like why the author of Gone Girl would be public, like want to first of all read my manuscript, let alone publish it. And she gave me the entire story of how Zando is this independent publisher, just started, that they want to kind of upend the traditional publishing ecosystem with, kind of discovering authors that don't have a huge community. And I say this with a lot of pride and humility that I'm an absolute nobody, who was writing poetry in obscurity for 15 years. So her mission is to kind of discover new talent with some big, bold ideas and something to say, and pushing genre in different and interesting directions. So 24 hours after that, offer, we accepted it, and I was on Zoom with Gillian, who is so incredibly kind and so warped and funny and brilliant, and also has a lot of Catholic trauma of her own.
Love that for us.
Yeah, so it's been a total thrill ride, and just one that I'm still just like blinking my eyes trying to figure out if it's real.
Oh my God, amazing. Well, deserve, first of all. Okay, so you said that you've been writing this book in your head for 10 years.
Yeah.
Where on earth did this idea come from? And like, when did it come to you? When did you start putting words on paper? And what's your writing process like?
Well, I did go to Catholic school for 8 years in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And my family's extremely religious. My uncle is a deacon in the Maronite Catholic Church. And if anyone on the call doesn't know what that is, it's the Catholicism of Middle Eastern countries like Lebanon, Syria, and Palestine. So it's like Roman Catholicism in that it's under the papal authority. But long story short, the service is like exactly the same. It's even longer, actually. And so I was just this like queer kid sitting in church, kind of soaking in all the theater and camp and self-hatred and like also awe. And, I never felt the call myself to the actual, kind of tenets or beliefs of the church. But it's just when you're baptized or you're confirmed, you're just, it's almost like and I say this again with a lot of respect and love, it's like a cult, basically. Like, I didn't choose to be baptized when I was 3 months old and then confirmed and all that jazz. So it's, even though I kind of distanced myself from it as I grew older, it's still a huge part of me.
Yeah.
So I've always been interested in a way to repair or build a bridge, as you said, right before we got in the call, not like a bridge between the worlds of not like trying to excise it from my head or my heart, but just building a world where these ideas can kind of coexist. And I'm really passionate about queer futures and like queer spatialities where you can inhabit a life you want to inhabit, even though rules might suggest otherwise. So it's like fantasy and fiction in that regard. So because, obviously the church is still very much like love the sinner, hate the sin. And there's still a lot of reckoning to do with that in terms of Catholicism, the relationship between queer Catholics. But so I wanted to write, I don't know, I've always also been like interested in nuns as individuals. And when I was a kid, my teachers were all like 95, years old, and they weren't the kind of trope of violent, nasty, that you kind of see in both media as well as the stories that I've read a lot about and have studied about horrific crime. Essentially it's another crime story, like, and I'm a crime fiction writer, so I'm thinking about it from a few different ways, like nuns' collusion with res schools and the laundries of Ireland and things like that. And then also patriarchy. And so just wanted to pull out one individual character and think about her. So this idea that this young nun who's like 33, kept kind of coming into my mind and playing with the iconography of the age, and also someone who's very proudly lesbian and doesn't need to hide or use masquerade in that regard, and also a devout Catholic was something fascinating to me to explore as a character who, didn't really fit into one category or another. And I think that we all have individual pathways into our queerness, into our spiritual religion, or whatever it might be, your belief system, your atheism. It's yours. It's mine. No one can really tell you how to do it. And so I was, even though, of course, like to be Catholic, you 10 commandments. So constantly I kept brushing up against these limits for myself. So that, of course, made me want to dive in even deeper. And I love mysteries. I've always loved the golden age mysteries like Sherlock Holmes and Miss Marple, the PBS Sunday night, like mystery with Ellen Cummings and like Laura Linney and all that shit. That is my jam. It was the
Love
only
Laura
thing that,
Lee.
right? Oh, so good. And it was like
Okay.
the only thing that united my family.
Mhm.
It's like it was a murder show. So I
Yeah.
was fascinated by the enduring appeal of mysteries, and then the TCM noir movie marathon,
Yeah.
P.I. Marlowe with the hat, the trench
Uh,
coat,
yeah.
cigarette, these like really cool dudes who are also very misogynistic and like, but the brio and the braggart and the swagger was like really interesting and sexy and problematic to me all at the same time. So I
Mhm.
wanted to import all of that into this nun who fancies herself a sleuth and then, of course, finds herself right in the eye of the storm of a murder mystery. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, just a character who people don't, can't quite get at first glance was a fascinating challenge for me to write.
Yeah. That's so interesting because as I mentioned before we started, we have a lot of religiously traumatized people in Sapph-Lit, myself included. And we have a lot of chats about it. Um,
Yeah,
and our other book this month is Hijab Butch Blues by Lamia H. And it's a wonderful queer Muslim memoir. Highly
I need to
recommend
read it.
reading it if
Oh,
you haven't already. Um, but when I was speaking with them, we were talking about how with religion, kind of like with sexuality, there's this idea that you have to be all in for your religion to be valid. Like you have to perform this kind of idea of the perfect religious person, kind of like how you have to perform what a good gay is. And
yes.
for me, I started thinking a lot about how um sexuality has a certain fluidity, and especially bisexuality has like a certain fluidity to it. I'm bisexual, and granting that same kind of fluidity and flexibility with religion, and it's kind of a half-baked thought, but like just being a bit more gentle with yourself when um thinking about your relationship to religion, and understanding that there is no right way. Like you said, it's very individual. And then you have this character Holiday who really like completely flips the idea of a queer person on their head by not just being a practicing Catholic but being a nun. So I'd love to hear about how, in your mind, how Holiday um reconciles her queerness with her religion.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I love that center it in that way in terms of that individual experience. And I think the rigidity is
Yeah.
so hard. It's so hard for people. And we see that with Holiday's story in terms of the rigidity of even her own experience of trauma and recovery and love and losing love. And when we're hurt, you can kind of become more rigid as well. So it's this sort of snake that eats its own tail. But for her, I think, some of the characters, poke at her and they even, they question and offer that mirroring of like, how can you be a lesbian and a nun who takes this provisional, in my book, she takes a provisional vow as that leads up to the permanent vows in book 3, which is this is the first in the trilogy. So how can you, and for me it comes back to that dialectic in queer futures all the time, where it's like it's the yes and it's like, yes, I'm gay, and yes, I am married to the universe. It's like in her mind, she can be and have this rich lesbian experience whilst, being basically moving into a space of asexuality
Yeah.
physically, but not in her heart or in her head. So I think that was really important for me to explore again, because it's these ideas of, like, nobody can tell you what it means to be queer. And so as well as it's by my repudiation of the, like, you know, the limits that Catholicism puts on people. Even recently, like 3 months ago, I think the Pope came out and he said, homosexuality should not be criminalized, but it's still a sin.
Mm.
And so I thought, like, what's worse? The
Yeah.
internal sense of criminality, or the external state telling you that you've made an infraction? So I keep coming back to the yes and. It's like, yes, she's a lesbian, and yes, she's a nun. And she lives out those dichotomous tensions. And I think tensions can be beautifully delicious as well as challenging,
Mhm.
depending on context. And so I give her characters that both celebrate that and enjoy that in the richness of the experience. And I'd say, like, my get out of jail free card is like the Whitmans, we contain multitudes, but it's true. It is absolutely true. Like, we
I
are
say that
many
all the
things.
time.
We are many things. And so I try to narrativize that with Holiday.
Yeah.
Yes, she is what she is in the moment, and that maybe even she questions those notions, like, what is a permanent vow? What is permanent? Like, if you walk down the aisle and you take a vow to marry someone, or you take a vow to live this life of service, what do these questions mean? So really, this is a book of questions, and those central questions are key.
Mhm.
Those they're key to
Yeah,
Holiday.
I love that. And one of the things that as the reader, I saw Holiday kind of not like taking religion is all up to interpretation, in my opinion. And one of the ways that she queered religion for herself is affirming God as non-binary and using they, them pronouns when referring to God. Um, we also discussed this a bit with Hijab Butch Blues. And I find it so refreshing after we kind of had like a decade of pseudo-feminist God is a woman like narratives shoved down our throat through the media, Ariana Grande song in particular, and that statement kind of always bothered me because I feel that when you say God is a man, it comes with all of the like positive attributes of masculinity, but when you say God is a woman, you know, the media and religion kind of takes up the negative attributes of femininity with that statement. Again, kind of a half-baked idea, but can you share your thoughts personally and from the eyes of Holiday of like this idea of God as non-binary?
Yeah, I love that idea, Nina. I think it's beautiful and generative. And I think the more we can, again, turn that from this kind of edict into a question mark is more
Mm.
positive. Like, it's more reparative, and it's more interesting. I mean, it's just frankly more interesting because, just like words themselves, like, language keeps evolving, we keep evolving.
Mm.
Institutions should keep evolving, and I feel like that's the key. That, like, when I was a kid, everybody that I knew went to church. Now, like, nobody goes, really, of my generation. Now I'm squarely Gen X, and, like, and yet people want to belong. People want to feel comforted by one another, and so I try to respect what religion and larger communities can give to people in this book too. I mean, this Holiday specifically needs the structure, and she kind of becomes addicted to it in the way that P.I. Marlowe or Sam
Mm.
Spade and a lot of the canonical hardboiled noir guys sort of drank their whiskey and became, that was their pain relief. And for Holiday, the religion becomes part of the addiction. But for the idea of God as non-binary, I mean, it's, to me, a no-brainer. Obviously, if we have this force that is both life-giving and somehow connected to everything else, like from the Big Bang onward. Like, of course, we're all just, floating through this beautiful cosmic interconnectedness. So to limit it in one way or another felt incompatible with what drives Holiday, even though she's Catholic. So again, it's just like the yes and I've had some people, I've I've chatted with an ex-monk and a nun, and we've had some really rich and robust discussions about the actual core doctrine and things like that. And this is the space to again just like push a little bit.
Yeah.
So even though maybe a devout Catholic would have a specific set of ideas, Holiday's marching to the beat of her own drummer, and she's inventing her experience of religion, even though she says the prayer, she says Hail Mary, she goes to church, she blesses herself, she puts her hand in the holy water, she goes through the rituals. Because again, I think rituals and that space is very individual.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I thought that was like healing to even write. It was kind of reparative for me to even write,
Yeah.
to write, to rewrite that. Like it never felt quite right to me to write God as a man. Like I just was like, what the hell? Even when I didn't know anything, even when I was like a little kid, it's like it
Yeah.
just felt so weird.
Yeah.
Really? Like some dude with a white beard? What the
That's
fuck?
the image that we're like fed at like from childhood with I mean, did you have like a children's Bible that was like a picture book as well? Because I did. And
Totally.
it was just like all of these photos of like these like old men with beards basically throughout the entire Bible. That's basically most of the Bible. There's, only a few women and their names are like Lauren and Rachel. And then you have God and just like this little like puppet master throughout the whole thing, and he's like kind of this old white man with a like white beard. I'm like, that doesn't seem right.
It didn't fit, and it never, again, I never felt that really delicate and sort of a fingertip feel around that for myself. It just, and that was part of it. I just felt so othered by that. And even growing up in the Lebanese church, like our people are from the Middle East, and it was just this like white guy, you know what I mean? Like it just felt so
Yeah.
disconnected
Jesus
from,
was not white.
oh,
No way.
no, 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 no. And so, stepping into the space and offering something to the received canon, both of the religiosity part and then also the mystery, the like hard boiled part of it too. It just felt like it just felt something that I had to do, that I wanted to do, that I wanted to read as a reader. And Holiday is just sort of that battering ram and right into the space. And for all those reasons.
Yeah. So reading this book, I could definitely tell that you have a background in poetry. There's a lot of really beautiful prose during Holiday's kind of like melodramatic, reflective moments where she's kind of like a teen boy narrating an indie film, like, and narrating her like thoughts and actions. So I'd love to hear about how you found Holiday's inner voice and how writing fiction for you differed from your poetry work.
Yeah, they're so different. My God, writing novels is so hard. So hard. Poetry will always be my first love in the sense of what a poem can do with not very much space, where there's it's a sensibility of looking at the world and asking how things can exist so differently at the same time, which is what metaphor can do, the comparing unlike things. And so Holiday's voice to me had to be very urgent and very aesthetically specific. Like, she quotes Bikini Kill lyrics, she quotes scripture all in the same breath. She's like into smut, she's horny AF, and she's devout, like all in the same. And it has to feel tonally totally consistent. She doesn't change who she is when she's praying versus like thirsting after Rosemary Flynn. So it had to be for me a very specific voice. And then actually that came first. really her voice, more so than the plot points and the structure of the book. And that also is very hard boiled. Like, you just kind of have this like narrator kind of putting you in a headlock in the beginning of the story and just taking you through the whole way. So I did want that narrative experience of her showing you the world, because that's also part of the sleight of hand. When you get to the end and, you really like, she's giving you what she missed. She's giving you why and how she wanted to see the world in a specific way because of her need to fit, to her need to belong. And so that voice was absolutely, essential to that, just the way, the words she uses, how she's constantly connecting to unlike things to try to find a path forward. And she's also obsessed with her own, desire to sleuth and the mystery
Oh
she
yeah.
escaped when she was a kid. And so sometimes those things that we escape into that give us comfort, whether it's, the like the music we listen to, whether it's like was Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or like the things that exist in the mosaic of your mind. Like for her, it was the mystery books and the post-punk riot girl music, like, and then the Bible. Even when she didn't understand it herself and kind of was hating on the priest, she was like going into these spaces for comfort.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, I loved the character of Holiday so much, and I can't wait to see like where the series goes, and we'll definitely get to that. But I also, when I was, researching for this interview, I noticed that you have a few artist statements on your website focusing on experimentation and subverting traditional tropes and structures, which this book totally does on both of those points. Um, can you discuss what those artist statements mean for you and what it means for you to be an artist in today's world?
Yeah. I mean, art was the thing like that just got me through a lot of moments of self-hatred and, not knowing myself. And in my 40s, I was diagnosed with ADHD. I just always thought my brain was broken. I didn't really understand why and how I thought the way that I thought it was always normal to just have three thoughts at once. And then, I was closeted for a long time. So I internalized a lot of um, confusion and my self-concept was really like low and almost invisible. And yet art, this like absolute hand reaching into the pit to pull me out. It was art. So I'm, very passionate about creating and making and community and reading, like reading James Baldwin's Giovanni's Room. Like, I mean, that changed my life. It saved my life. And so I'm very passionate about just the making, and I think reading and writing are super connected. And for me, my favorite way to read is starting in the morning and like tearing through a book and finishing it in one day.
Same.
Yeah. And it's not, I don't always have that opportunity to do that, but like I just feel so grateful when I can. And I do, like, as you mentioned, like poetry, and I write flash fiction noir, and I do VR, like I write little micro mysteries in virtual reality. I just, the idea of a project, like we'll take it somewhere else. But for, this, the idea of like the fact that we can create something out of nothing is my religion. It's like very special and very sacred to me. So I think right now more than ever, we just need like people with originality, and chat GPT can do just a lot of, it can do a lot of stuff very in a mediocre way.
Yeah.
But like the human uniqueness, your voice, my voice, Olivia's voice, Shay, Ash, Jennifer, everybody, Veronica, Jen, Athena, like very cool names on this Zoom, by the way. Like we all are, we can say the things in the ways that we are able to. And to me, that's more important now than ever. Like not just because of AI, but because there's still a huge pushback also, like the pendulum swinging in Florida, and don't say gay like bill was originally to third grade, now it's to 12th. Like there's a horrifying momentum that is a pushback against a lot of the rights that people have fought very hard for. So it's like, for all those reasons and more, I think being an artist, asking questions, giving us places for repair, exploration, catharsis, like the whole, all of Aristotle's ideas about like tragedy being something very healing if it's earned, you know, can, that's why I like noir. It's like, it's bleak as hell, but damn, like it's so, it can be so cleansing. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, feel like you're wrung out like a rag, you know?
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for that. You mentioned ChatGPT. Can you share
Yo,
more about your thoughts on ChatGPT?
hell yes. Well, okay. I mean, this is gonna go like really out there,
I
so
love that.
buckle up,
Do it.
buddy.
I'm buckled in.
All right. So if our heartbeats are like they're electrical impulses,
Yeah.
right? Like our thoughts are just they're sparks. They're like,
Energy.
you know, they're energy, right? Kilowatts, keystrokes are also just energy and blinks. Like I don't think in ones and zeros. I think it's like these impulses of energy. You know, I think we're all, it's all part of this. It goes back to the like the idea of God as no gender at all. We're all from the Big Bang, yo. We're all connected. Like we're all stardust. We're all star snow. ChatGPT, we created it. This is our first, the first CPU is the brain and the neural network. People create, you know, like what we see. Like, so it, to me, it's not surprising at all that we have these things. People create in ways for better or for worse. R.E. Frankenstein, which is one of my other favorite books, like badass 18-year-old, you know what I'm saying, Mary Shelley? But I just think it's a little spooky to see the ways that, you know, these persuasive technologies can make you feel. It's like more, it's not about intelligence for me, it's about the relationship between moments. So it's like there's this art, quote unquote, artificial thing that can make you smile or make you confounded. It's like, but I think it's just part of a continuum. My great hope is that we just continue to make art that is ours in this human experience, because if ChatGPT is just generating language models based on the internet up to 2021, right? It's read the whole internet, it's metabolized it. And if you say, write me a spaghetti Western poem or a sestina, it will do that based on what it's read up to 2021. But if we keep just using like AI to make cultural products, it'll just keep making AI. So then it'll ultimately just be AI making AI. Humans need to, you know, we got to stand our ground.
Yeah.
And there's no going back. There's no going backwards. There's no unringing the bell. But again, that's all the more reason just like for me to like whisper into your ear and for you to whisper into mine, because that this is the thing that's going to keep us like knowing each other, asking about each other, keeping us intimate with each other, because you know it's like real effing easy to like just write in, you know, like can you, what is the blah blah blah, like using it as a bit of an almost administrative time saver. And that's great. I think tools are amazing. People are using Chat GPT to give voice to folks who've lost the ability to speak. My
Mhm.
uncle had a sort of an ALS type of um, situation, and he couldn't speak anymore. And he, you know, he passed away last year. But like, I would have loved that if he could use that too. So I think tools are great. You know, this is a tool. Like my contact lenses are tools. Like I'm not scared of that stuff. It's just more like the artist in me makes
Yeah.
it, I feel so urgent to just keep with each other. I want to know more, you know, from you, like from our hearts. And I
Yeah.
think that it's an interesting moment.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. I've never used ChatGPT, but now I'm like,
Oh,
hmm.
check it out. Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to hear if everybody has, like, since we're all in the creative and book space right now, it's interesting. Like, it's
Yeah.
really interesting. It can be
Yeah. I mean,
spooky.
I wish I had it when I was like in school so I could cheat better.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
totally. And I was a terrible student. I was an awful student. I would have loved to have it.
oh yeah. Anyways.
But like, writing is a form of thinking though, so it's just like, I
Yeah.
don't know, it's something about it.
It's preventing thinking.
Which
um
sometimes is awesome.
reeling this back into Scorched Grace, bringing it back. Um in terms of your research process for this book, I feel like, you know, there's so many things and like little rabbit holes that you could have gone down in terms of, you know, New Orleans. Like, did you go to New Orleans and, you know, like what was your experience there? In terms of thriller and mystery inspo, it's so clear that you're just a mystery geek. So I'd love to hear
Yeah.
more about that. Queer nun history.
Yeah.
Like what did you look into to make this book what it is?
I did live in New Orleans for 2 years, which was a great gift. Not long enough, but I do go back whenever I'm starting a new book. And I just finished the second book in the series, Blessed Water. So I was back for that. And it to me is the most important American city, and for so many reasons. So I wanted to really explore the understory of it, not, as Sister Halliday says in the book, like not the caricature and the tyranny of that caricature, but um, so I did research Catholicism in New Orleans, and also, queer nuns have a long lineage, pre-medieval times, as a place of refuge. If you want to kind of eschew like a heteronormative space and just sort of have that, whether you were, religious or not. Like I didn't really dig too deeply into that, but I did read a lot of biographies of current nuns, like Sister Helen Prejean, who was a badass, and uh, Sister Simone Campbell and the Nuns on the Bus, who are very politically active. So there's a long history of radical nuns as well as, horrifying criminal nuns too, just like anyone else. So I was interested in, again, finding places where we can explore and ask questions about that. So you have like your Sister Honor and your Sister Augustine, and then, the four nuns and the Sisters of the Sublime Blood kind of hold those spaces. And then I liked, of course, explode notions of trope. So like honoring trope in some way, and then flipping them all on their head. Like Sister Holiday's both a lone wolf sleuth as well as a femme fatale, because I think that's really interesting to merge that. And so yeah, but I can go really down the rabbit holes with research. I try to be more like, of course, responsible, but also speak to emotional authenticity. So for me, keeping that just emotionally authentic and trying my best to build something that felt like it could be real for readers.
Yeah, that makes sense. Did you, so the ending of the book, Cuckoo, just all at once, I was just like, oh my God, what is happening right now? Did
You and
you,
me both.
yeah, yeah, did you write this knowing that Sister Augustine has this incredibly tragic backstory, like kind of used religion as a justification for this like immense violence? And then like did you know that she was going to be behind it all and would her life would end the way that it did?
Yeah, I always start the mystery with the end.
Mm.
Totally understood for me, again, emotionally and through the mood and atmosphere. So I was like, I know I want an incinerating end. And I had to work backwards,
Like
to
incinerating beginning, incinerating
yes,
end.
yes.
Yeah.
Basically, yes, the inciting, the fire in the beginning, the fire in the end. So the symmetry there. And I had to figure out a lot of the plot points to make that feel believable. And I do think that, we have unfortunate, sexual violence in the book that launches characters into totally different directions. And also, itemizing the kind of cost and the price of, society that continues to violate folks that are, vulnerable in vulnerable communities. So white supremacy, patriarchal violence, and, where people are devalued. And so unfortunately, Sister Augustine, who essentially like clung to religion as her life raft when that was being taken from her, made a choice to basically burn it all down to the ground rather than give it up. And similarly, Holiday has also had to cling to, because she has her own trauma in different ways, cling to religion as a bit of a life raft. So again, and then her brother, who's sort of like her gay Jesus, Moose, he's big, huge protagonist in book 2, and all of the main characters have, yeah, like secrets divulged. They all have their own arcs. Revo has her arc, Moose has his arc, Revo has her arc, Nina has her arc, Rosemary Flynn has her arc, and because I try to dismantle those ideas of like minor and major characters in some ways. Like we all have reasons why we do, and we all have journeys. And I think that's, as a reader, I'm really fascinated by that. But yeah, and I knew it all, and it was yeah, I mean, I feel everything all the characters feel. So it was really hard. I was like open mouth sobbing during a couple of aspects of the writing process. It's very physical. It's not just
Really?
from, oh
That's
yeah, it's,
Say more
oh,
about that, because like, I mean, there are so many emotional scenes in this book, especially, but yeah, what is that like emotional writing process?
it's just, basically getting like hit with a flamethrower, just because if I don't feel it, you're not going to feel it.
Mm,
If it's not real for me, if it's autopilot, if it's just here, if it's just cerebral, then why bother?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to do something else. For me, it is a really hugely sensorial and in subtextual,
Mm,
ghostly experience that will live on after, long after you've read it. So in the ways, that art can just kind of change us. It's like
yeah.
changed my, like seeing Moonlight, like changed my life, too. Like I keep having these things, and women talking, like I don't know if you've seen that, or, reading certain, like My Sister the Serial Killer. I don't know if you've read that by Oyen
Yeah.
Kim Braithwaite. Like you get to the end and you're like, oh my effing God, like what was that? And so it's at an 11. Like I just wanted that feeling. So there's, writing that was just bloodletting and brutal
Yeah.
and very healing for me too, because it
Wow.
is catharsis for me as well.
Yeah, 100%. Um, so what is next for Holiday? Can you share about your plans for the trilogy? I mean, the Holy Trinity. We love a trilogy. I heard it might be called Blessed Water. Can you
Yep.
share
Bless them.
share
Yeah.
if you feel you were able to? Because I'm really curious.
You hear it here first, Sapph-Lit. It's, oh my gosh, I get like, well, I guess it'll be on YouTube. So, but it takes place over 3 days. Blessed. I also like, I like using the word blessed or blessed because it's a bit of a Rorschach test. You can interpret it however you like
Yeah,
and say it however you like. And I think that's really fun as a poet, that each word can have its agility.
yeah,
But for me, I say blessed water, but it takes place over 3 days. It's a ripper. I mean, I wanted to write something super fast that you can read in a day or 3 days. So it takes place over Good Friday, Saturday, Easter Sunday. Starts with Sister Holiday, basically. Oh, I can't give it. It starts with another. It just starts with another dead body in a different ecosystem. Just think of the title. It's like, so you've got your
okay.
fire,
So like
you
New
know,
Orleans marshes and like that kind of thing, maybe Mississippi River.
Mississippi
Okay.
River. All right.
Okay.
So you can put the pieces together. And it's shorter. It's like 260 pages rather than 310 or 320 or whatever the heck it was. Because I like shape, and maybe that's the poet in me as well. So just knowing that I have 3 books, I'm like, okay, we've got our scorching kind of formidable first book, and I want that the second bridge book to just to really like move like a rapid flood,
Mm,
flooding, swallowing, tears, bloodshed, water, all of that. And then the third book uh is working title is Ravaged Vow. And that's like
Ravaged Vow. Ooh.
that's again like working with the sort of pulp titles and the like hurricanes and ripping up trees from their roots and upending
Yeah.
and
I
another light read.
Oh, that is so exciting. Okay, I cannot wait for that to come out. Very exciting. I love this little preview. All right, last question of mine, and then we're going to move on to the rapid fire round. And for anyone on the call who has questions for Margot, you can drop them in the chat now, and we can ask if we have time. Okay, what are you currently reading? Oh, wait, no. Last question of mine, and then the rapid fire round. I just got too excited. Is there a reaction from a reader that has stood out to you?
Yes, totally. I mean, so many, so many. Actually, a lesbian preacher in the South reached out and said that she now says holidays stuff as like her own prayer. So like the cursing or like certain things, like she's like, these are the things that I now say. And to me, again, that's just like so beautiful and so like gorgeously unpredictable, because I personally was like, I felt so harmed by like the prayers I had to say, like chanting and didn't believe in. And so I wanted to just like stir that up. And so the fact that somebody can find healing and like a way forward through that is to me the greatest gift that I could ever imagine. So that was, hugely, hugely incredible. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Um, okay, now rapid fire round. What are you currently reading?
I'm reading Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby,
Yes, I
which
got that
is
one.
so truly exceptional. And it is, I believe it came out 2 years ago. And he has a new book out now, All the Sinners Bleed, but I wanted to read Razorblade Tears before it. And it is astonishing, astonishing. I can't recommend it highly enough. Razorblade Tears.
Amazing. What is
So
a
good.
book that what is a book that you recommend everyone to read?
My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite, a Lagos noir, and the narrator's sister is a serial killer, and it is one of the funniest books. I love my holy trinity is like sexy, sad, funny. That's like where I
Yeah.
love to live. You know what I'm
Oh, yeah.
saying? And
100%.
this is seriously one of the funniest and most profound and brilliant books. And yeah, everyone please read it and tell me what you think of it. It's so good.
Is there a book coming out soon that you're excited to read?
Oh gosh. Yes, My Murder by Katie Williams. And it's a murder clone story. So a clone avenging one of her murders. Don't know exactly. Feel like it's gonna be Orphan Black meets, Philip K. Dick and Octavia Butler and
Yeah, it sounds kind of Westworldy to me. Yeah.
totally, totally. And I love genre, so I love when people screw with genre. I love it.
Yeah. Did you take up an unusual quarantine activity in 2020?
I I started playing the guitar again.
Again, like
Yes,
holiday.
like holiday. Yes, it was a way of merging with holiday actually.
Yeah.
So it was really kind of living out some of the things. That was also part of the research, and I just have found that I thought with my ADHD it would be really hard to kind of just sit still. but like it's actually the hyper focus took over, and I was like, oh
Yeah,
my God, that feels
that makes
so
sense.
good.
I love
Feels
that.
so good.
If you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
James Baldwin.
Favorite class that you took at university?
Ooh, awesome question. Favorite class that Russian folklore.
Ooh, was that like a
Yeah,
literature class or more like history?
it was more literature. I just think myth and folklore and the woods and gnomes and firebirds. It's just Technicolor, acid, LSD. Like, oh my
Yeah,
gosh, it's
I
so
love that.
creative.
Mhm. Okay, and then favorite sapphic movie or TV show?
Oh, no question. Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
I I have a portrait of a lady on fire tattoo right here. I have the I have the, let me see if I can roll up my sleeve and show you.
As Sapph-Lit realness. Oh, that's
Mhm.
like get a really close up so I could see that. Oh my God, I love
It's the
that.
finger in the book. Like at the end. Yeah, love
That's
it.
and I could do a please do a Sapph-Lit about Portrait of a Lady on Fire, like
Yeah.
that we watch.
Ooh, movie night. 100%.
The Adele Hanel character just left the convent before that narrative starts. That she was a nun and she
No
left.
way.
You learn that in the first like 10 minutes of the film.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the real like
Oh
actress
yeah,
for,
no,
I was
I
like,
can't
oh
recall
yeah.
the
Yeah.
character's name. I don't know if anybody knows it, but yeah.
I have no idea. I need to rewatch it. I haven't seen it since like early 2020. Like it was like one of my first like movies that I watched in quarantine and I was just like violently sobbing and after.
Yeah, that
Like
talk
now.
about catharsis, right? Like
Mhm.
it's hard, that movie. Oh God, it's so you want it to end to be so different, but then it's just so right, even though it's so brutal and heartbreaking and beautiful. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, and then last rapid fire question. Favorite sapphic celebrity or content creator to follow on social media?
I am terrible at social media. I am
Okay,
so
then
awful.
just favorite sapphic
I'm gonna
celebrity.
say Live Little, author of Rosewater, who I know,
For reading next month.
which
Mhm.
I think Liv is so brilliant and fun and real and also cool. It's like a hard Venn diagram to find that space. So
Yeah,
that's who I would point to.
amazing.
And
Okay.
you, of course.
Oh,
And you.
oh my God, thank you. And then we have a few questions in the chat. So Ash is asking, have you faced backlash for writing a blasphemous book? What was the
Yes.
reaction from your religious family members as well?
There are readers online on Amazon and other folks, and they may be from like I was on a Read with Jenna thing. I think some people that may be coming into it just from the Gillian Flynn angle
Mm.
are sort of surprised by how gay it is and queer it is. So some readers are warning other readers on like Amazon specifically, like this book is heavily LGBTQ. So there's backlash on that angle.
Mm.
Some of the religious family members have not said a thing, which I know is lethal.
As
But
someone who has experienced the same thing, that is correct.
yeah, so I'm good. I'm good. Don't tell me. And like, I'm the type of, even though I'm writing like a gold tooth, like badass who gets in a bar fight and breaks into a burning building, like I'm the type of person that apologizes when someone walks into me on the street.
Same.
So I'm like, I'm sorry that I've upset you, Pope. But at the same time, I'm like, F you. This is my art is going to speak for me. And so I've been shocked. Long story short, the MAGA freaks are going to hate, and I'm all here for that. And there is talk of, I think, maybe some library banning in Oklahoma, but more so, I've received personal like notes from the religious community saying thanks, which is like I'm not gonna cry because I just did some really good eye makeup for my panel in like an hour at the Boston Book Fair, so I'm not gonna do that, but it's been surprising in the other direction, like
Yeah.
totally shocking. So we'll leave it there.
We contain multitudes. We can apologize to people on the street and still be fuck you, feminist badass bitch.
Right.
Okay, and then last question in the chat from Olivia. What's a book that you think every queer person should read?
Ooh, that is really good. Of course, I'm thinking of so many. I mean, I would say every single book by Audre Lorde
Yeah.
and every single one. But everything is a required reading for queer people. I would say, yeah, the just Audre Lorde's entire canon, because it's just hard to just choose just one. And because I think also like intersectional queerness is our key to thriving. And so that is really beautiful and like expansive. And so when things are really expansive, I'm like, they're required. And then I also love like drilling down into the granularities too. But I think Gay Bar is another great book right now.
Yeah.
Jeremy Atkinson Lynn. So many, so many great ones.
Yeah. We read Sister Outsider as our first nonfiction book, and we're reading Zammy next month. So
Yeah,
big
that's,
Audre Lorde fans in
I
Sapph-Lit.
will probably join for that.
Please do. Yeah, you're more than welcome to. Well, that's the end of our questions. Margot, thank you so much for being here. I've loved chatting with you.
Thank you so much to everyone. I waving to you all, and thank you for spending time with Sister Holiday and bringing her into your hearts and your heads.
Aw. All right. Well, everyone have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. Good luck on your panel, Margot. And yeah, we'll keep in touch. All right. Bye, everyone.